It was very surreal. I remember walking across the stage to receive the award from Jeff Bezos, and the only thing I heard him say was like, "Great job and congratulations." And I don't remember anything else. Like I blacked out.
Welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast, where we demystify emerging technologies and give you the keys to unlock your successful tech career. I'm your host, Grace McJones. Let's unlock the future together. Hello. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Tech Unlock podcast. Today, I'm so excited to have Kimberly Hill on the show. She's a business development manager, and that's a role like I am not honestly familiar with because I work on the engineering side. So I'm really happy to have someone who works in non-engineering but has an exciting and very impactful role within the tech industry. She was at Amazon for about 8 years, and she's now at TikTok. So excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Kimberly. How are you doing?
Thank you, Grace. First off, thank you for having me. I mean, I appreciate you reaching out and like setting this up. I think it's always a great place to be able to share your story and tell others. I also like, I wish I could hear that every morning just to kind of like hype myself up, but doing well. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, that's good. And I love, like most of the people I have on the show, either I know them or we're connected on LinkedIn. And I saw that we were connected on LinkedIn. And I was like, hey, like this is an interesting role. Like a lot of people right now who are in the job search, especially they're being laid off or trying to like pivot into tech, they're like, okay, if I'm not an engineer, and if I want to change and do something new, like what else is out there? And I just felt like your role was super interesting. It's not just a typical program manager role that we see all the time. And I love how you describe yourself. You describe yourself as someone who is highly motivated, driven to find the gaps and innovative ways to serve customer needs. And I think that that was so specific, but I'm like, that's a skill a lot of people don't have or don't know that they have. So can you just tell us how you got into your first tech role and what that journey has been like for you so far?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm a fairly nosy person, and that has helped me a lot in my career, especially with getting into tech, which I can weave into like the BDM, business development manager space as well. But my very first job was at Amazon. I was a recruiting coordinator, so not very technical, and I was more so helping to recruit teams that were building out the search engines and functions of Amazon. I think this is like back in 2014. So honestly, I applied like on a whim to this company called Amazon, and I was like, okay, I think this sounds interesting. They're growing. I'm interested in tech. I was not exposed to that growing up, and it's not. I don't have like. I don't come from a family of engineers or designers or anything like that. So tech is really, it was really venturing out into an unknown space, and thankfully, um, so I'm originally from Texas. I moved to Seattle for grad school, for business school specifically, and focused in entrepreneurship. And if you're in Seattle, like Amazon, Microsoft, Zillow, all these companies are huge there, whether you know what they do or not. And so I honestly, just from hearing Amazon so much from being in Seattle, I was like, okay, let's see what those jobs look like. And I enjoy speaking and talking to people. I like a bit of like convincing someone, or I like figuring out what they're interested in. And so recruiting for me was an easy way to pivot into something that I enjoyed, and a good place for me to start. And I had a little bit of like HR experience from being a temp before I worked before Amazon. I probably was temping at like 10 different places, for weeks or months at a time. And I was like, okay, let's just go for it. So that was my first role in a tech company. And thankfully, I've been able to pivot by finding the gap, which we'll get into too.
I love that. And for those who don't know what temp is, when you say you were temping, what does that mean?
Yes, I was a temporary employee, meaning I went through a placement company where they like will assign you to jobs, and it'll be for maybe 2 weeks at a time, 4 weeks. It could be up to 12 months or more. But it's not. It's the opposite of being a full time employee. So I believe I remember one role I did. I did not enjoy it, but I was like a receptionist. I just needed a role. I was like in business school still. I needed some money on the side. I was a receptionist at a school once, and then thankfully I joined this like chemical production company, and I joined as a recruiting
Hmm.
coordinator there, and that's where I started to gain more HR and recruiting experience. And that was like a 6 month role that eventually I got transitioned into a full time employee.
That's awesome. And I've heard a lot of different things about Amazon. I mean, no tech company is perfect.
True.
But what was that transition like for you when you felt like, okay, recruiting is cool, but it could be more? Because I do feel a lot of folks are in that transitional phase. Either they've been in tech for a while or they want to try something different. How did you go about internally making that switch?
Yeah. I would say being at Amazon, some of the best advice I got was to like get everything that you can from working here. So like don't leave this company not having touched any technology, not having worked with any tech
Mm,
teams. Even if you yourself are not a technical person, take full advantage of being here and make it work for you. So for me, a recruiting coordinator was just the entry point into this world that I wasn't exposed to growing up as a kid, right? Um, and so I honestly did a bunch of informationals with people. Would, we had an internal tool where you could look up people to see what roles they were in. And I would just contact people on the side and DM. Using the internal messaging tool, I would just send them like a quick instant message and be like, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'd love to learn more about your role. Could we do a coffee chat?" And so this is like pre-COVID, so coffee chats were a lot more usual. I think now it's probably a virtual meet and greet, or maybe you just do a phone call. Um, but people were actually really, I think this is a helpful tip for anyone. People enjoy talking about themselves. So if you're at a networking event, right, like ask somebody something about
yeah.
themselves. So that's what I did for these coffee chats. Like, tell me about yourself, your journey. How did you get to where you are? And I talked to product marketing managers, product managers, program managers, marketing managers, account managers, like business development, which was not a very built out role at Amazon at the time. And I just did a bunch of coffee chats with people. I also joined BIN, the Black Employee Network at Amazon. Shout out to BIN. A life changing organization and just time of my life, really. I met many of my closest friends, best friends there. Um, and I was able to even build products, help build a storefront out of my experience there. So being in BIN also exposed me to other Black professionals who were in the same boat as me or who were in a different field. And I don't know, it's just something maybe underlying where we're like, oh, I got you. I'm gonna help you. Like I want to have a deep
Mm.
conversation with you. I want to help you grow in your career, and being in BIN also exposed me to a lot more people and roles.
So you said a couple of things that I just wanted to draw attention to. So reaching out internally, networking, joining a ERG, that's employee resource group, which a lot of tech companies usually have. At Microsoft, it's called Blacks at Microsoft,
Mhm.
BAM. And there are other ones. I know with our company, we have ones for parents, people in the military, just different groups. And it helps when you feel like, okay, I have all these questions, but I want to have an affinity to people who might understand the context of my
Yeah.
life. And so I think that's great to be part of those communities. Did you feel any sort of imposter syndrome going from recruiting into this new role as a business development manager, and how did you handle that?
Yeah. I did. I felt a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think it's mostly because it was just a world being in another space of unknown and being uncomfortable. Um, I think what happened. So I went from being a recruiting coordinator to an account manager, which is in my mind like a stepping. Uh, it's the next step before you go into more of like a biz dev role. So I was able to like as a recruiting coordinator, my skills were coordinating schedules, talking to people, understanding why they're interested in a role, and then convincing, leaders basically to meet these individuals. Is very like tactical, so not the flashiest role. I'll be honest. And I
Right.
got really uncomfortable, and I was like, I know that I can have a larger impact at this company and in my life than this role. So that also pushed me to more of an account manager space to be in the account manager role, it really requires you to be great with people, to understand processes, to know how to communicate something that is going to upset someone. Like, hey, I know you want to do A, but you can only do B. So let me walk you through this. And that's the same thing that you're doing in the recruiting space. It's like, hey, I know that you want to get this job offer at this amount. I can help negotiate you to this. Or, it's a lot of negotiations, which is the same skill set basically for account management. And so it is a bit more business driven. I had to do a bunch of understanding of how retail and metrics worked, and what would make someone successful on the Amazon platform. So, for context, I was managing brands who sold on Amazon and helping them grow their business. And I loved it. Again, people first in. And so, the other thing I think is that life often gives you like small tests to help you build your
Mm.
skill set. So, I would say the account management skill set that I had then was also developed when I was in AmeriCorps and I was running a volunteer program for fifth grade girls, right? Like at that point, when you're a fifth grade student, you don't want to listen to what the teacher says. You want to do whatever you want to do. Like you want to have fun with your
Right.
friends, but you have to. I was
Mm.
convincing them, like, no, we need to read today. So it's the same thing as an account manager. Like, I know that you want to go run this sponsored post for yourself, but I actually need you to figure out the right sale price for this product.
Mm.
Like, right? So it's a lot of convincing. So it's the same. I think like in life, you get these small tests that help you get those skills. So transitioning into account management was a bit easier because I had those small tests from the beginning. Now, getting from account management to business development was a very long road. Um, and I guess leave first before I even get there, I'd say for business development, the skill sets that you really need are partnership development. So identifying the right partners for your business or space that you're in. And maybe it's helpful for me to define what business development is. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So to just even define what a business development manager is or what business development means, it is essentially a role that is focused on expanding and scaling a business through partnerships. So that can mean partnerships at a large scale. So like one corporation like an Amazon to another corporation like a Nike. Or that can mean at a smaller scale, like an entrepreneur um, who wants to start a delivery business and wants to do it through a platform. So it's basically connecting the dots and then making it a presentable business case for both parties. Like, how does this benefit the larger corporation, and how does this benefit this other company? It also means understanding the product. So let's say the product that I work on now at TikTok is more so focused on fulfillment, but understanding what the use cases are for why a corporation would even want to partner with us in this way. What are the metrics? What is the sales? Why does it make sense for this team, this person to want to use this? And then pairing that with the corporation of like, well, why is this the right partnership for us? So it's about, to me, again, I'm a nosy person. So it's about like figuring out the puzzle pieces, putting them together, making sure that you have a solid business case for it from a sales and data perspective, and then scaling it up from there. So that's what business development essentially is. Um,
I
yeah.
I love that breakdown, and I love how you're able to identify certain skills, and I feel like those skills are things that people probably have developed outside of tech, but they don't know that they can also transfer that within the tech
Yeah.
industry. Because, like you said, partnership, collaboration, and you keep saying nosy, but I'm like curiosity
Okay.
is a
Yes.
skill. Because a lot of people that have talked to who work in tech or interviewed, that was one of the biggest commonalities of like, oh, I was just naturally curious,
Yeah.
so like I applied or I spoke to this person, and so it's one of those essential things was like, okay, you have the curiosity, but the second part is acting on that curiosity. And
Yeah.
I love how you've kind of shown that all through your journey of like, oh, okay, what if I do this? Or what if this partner is interested in this? And like you said, connecting the dots. So I just want people to like realize like, yeah, and people call them like soft skills. I always say there's nothing soft about soft skills
Okay.
because
Agreed.
they're the hardest to develop, let's be
Yes.
honest.
Yeah.
But being able to identify those skills, I think, is something that a lot of people usually kind of cut themselves short and say, "Oh, I don't have this, I don't have that." It's like, oh no, like if you take the time to do the deep work and say, like, okay, write on paper, what actually can I do, outside of like my technical day to day work. And to your point of like, yeah, no, like you're journeying from AmeriCorps to, being a HR coordinator to being account manager and now to biz dev is like, okay, there are commonalities and
Yeah.
certain traits that you have seen along the line. It's like, okay, I actually do have some skills and talents that are very, very, very valuable. Um, but continue to tell us like what is kind of like the day-to-day functions of a business development manager, and how are you able to kind of have the impact that you have by the partnerships and the collaboration that you've done over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about like connecting the dots. I think one of the things with being the day to day on the business development side, what I love to say is like finding the gap. So, where are there gaps in our business and how do I help close those? So, I would say the day to day of at least for my space, right? Like a business development manager at another company may look different. But for me, the day to day is I'm on calls probably 70% of the time. I am collecting feedback. I'm asking our partners, how do you like the product that you're using with us? Is it meeting your needs? Where are the gaps of like, how is it not meeting your needs? And then the other, I'd say those, 50% of my calls are more of a find the gap, be a naturally curious person, um, collect feedback and like store it all in one place. The other part of my calls are more so pitching. So that's a bit more of a sales skill
Mm,
set that's needed. And honestly, everybody has sales experience, whether you are a salesperson or not. Like you're a salesperson. Even as an engineer, you have to sell yourself to get the job, right? Like you're a salesperson.
right.
So the sales role calls that I do are more focused on, okay, you need help with X, and we can help fulfill that for you with our solution. How again finding that gap and then pitching to them the need. I also really happen to enjoy figuring out what motivates people, and so those calls are more discovery,
Mm,
and it's more like honestly listening to people talk about their issues with their business and then saying like, okay, well, I can help you in this way, which makes the sales pitch a bit easier. So most of my days are spent on calls. The other portion, I spend a lot of time internally, talking to my counterparts, my peers, my manager, my manager's manager, and at those times, I'm doing more of, okay, here's the gap that I've identified from these calls and from these emails, and this is what we need to bring to market to help fill that gap. And so I am collecting data, I'm pitching, and then I'm also internally kind of influencing without the authority, and to help. I want to define like what influencing without authority means because I think that's a very techie term. Um, But influencing without authority means like you're getting people on board to do what you want without being their leader, without saying, "Oh, I'm a level so and so, so you have to do what I say." It's more like we're peers, and I'm convincing you that this is a good opportunity for both of us. So at those times, I'm usually hosting meetings, giving the feedback, and saying we should focus on this in the upcoming months because of these needs that I've heard from most people. What I'd like to build more into my role, which I think if you do go into a business development track, is a great skill set to have, is being analytical and focusing on data. So
mm.
that means looking at the P&L or profit and loss statement for your business and really using those numbers to help drive change. That's something I have not been able to build time into my schedule for, but it's a need. And so I think, the next skill set I'm looking to develop.
That's interesting. So you mentioned a lot of things that goes into your role. What are some misconceptions about what it is to be a business development manager? Because I feel like there's a lot of random information out there. And so from your perspective, like what are some things you feel like, oh, people think this is what it is, but it's really not?
That's a great question. Okay, business development is not an account manager. I'm
You're ready with
passionate
that
about that.
one.
Yes, it's a difference. Business development is like, I'm going to get you the leads to help you take your business from zero to 100 million, to 500 million, to $1 billion company. Account management is like, I'm going to help fine tune all of the issues in your day to day of your clientele to help it make
Mm.
better. Business development is more sales focused. I do think it tends to be, I don't think it has to be like a senior person, but it, from my experience, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen those roles get filled by people who are more seniored in their career. But essentially, you can go on a sales track and still end up in business development, or marketing and still end up in business development. Um, the other thing I'd say that it is not is, it is not a, it's very different than like a sales type of role where you are motivated strictly by a quota.
By kind of like your sales a quota.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say the other difference between business development and like what it's not is you're not a sales lead or executive. So you're not hitting a quota each month where like I have to make 20 calls and convert 15 of those into, um, give them, get 15 to green light into what we're doing. Business development is a slower process. It usually deals with, I'd say it can be a larger volume, but it's also focused on quality. And so it just takes a longer time, really, to do it. Sales, I think, tends to be more transactional. Um, Usually, those can, depending on the business that you're in, like your lead time for that is probably a month, maybe 2 months. Business development is looking at the full year, maybe 2, 3, 4 years out, and working backwards from
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for that breakdown because I mean, I didn't really know kind of the distinction between those two roles. So that's good to
that. Yeah.
know. So we've talked about your transition from, internally within Amazon to also externally now going from Amazon to TikTok. I'm interested to know what prompted that move. Like, how did you know it was time in your career to kind of move on to something else?
Yeah. I knew it in like the depths of my heart that it was time to leave. Like I literally felt a push that said it is time to go. I'm also a spiritual person,
Mm,
and I asked for like literally like give me the writings on the wall, make it plain that it is time, and that happened in dreams and other
I
ways.
love that.
But to answer your question, like in the most succinct way, I took a sabbatical in January from December to February 2022. Um, I took to
Okay.
like I just went and like got a chance to breathe and break. I was working on a fabulous team, people of who I'm still friends with in Amazon Studios, their DEI team, and I just felt so much misalignment with what I was doing at the time. At the company actually, and I had already done major things that I felt very proud of and accomplished with. And so later that year, I just ended up applying. This is kind of crazy how it happened. I left that team probably in like May. I joined one more team at Amazon on the logistics side in a business development role because I wanted to be back to talking to people directly. Um, at the same time, though, while I was applying internally, I also applied externally to roles. So I applied to TikTok at the same time I was applying to this other role internally at Amazon. Lo and behold, I get this offer from Amazon to transition internally. I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to do this. I join the team. Maybe 60 days later, TikTok hits me up and it's like, hey, do you want to interview? And I'm like, sure. I believe in saying yes. Say yes until you have a reason to
Yes.
say no. That's something I learned from my leak deal, but like keep saying yes until you have a reason to say no. So I was like, okay, yes. So I interviewed with them, and even though I changed roles in May, by December, I was at TikTok. And I was like, okay, I'm here now. So the transition for leaving the company was, I felt like, I had to transition out of my identity being so tied to Amazon and to the work that I did there. Yeah, like my self worth, my identity, my confidence was all tied to the work I did at Amazon, and that was me. And I'm like, I am much
Mm.
more of a whole person than being here. So that pushed me. I physically felt ill. I was like, I cannot keep coming here. I need a break. Um, I also feel like when it's time to
It's
change,
real.
yeah, when it's time to change, like It's time.
Everything, your environment, like your body, it just kind of like, sis, it's wrap it up,
Yes.
wrap it up. You can't ignore those signs. Let's
Right.
go, let's go.
We can't. And I also felt like I had really solid relationships at Amazon that, like, if things didn't work out, there's an option to go back if I want that, or there's an option to create something new. So I would say as you build your career, I value relationships like deeply. And so, I believe in like, if you don't have to burn the bridge, don't do it. But sometimes you have to. But those relationships reminded me, like, you are good, Kim, whether you are here at Amazon or at the next company.
Mm,
I also really like, yes, right? Like that reassurance,
I
it's
love
so
that.
good. And then lastly, I'm fascinated by e-commerce and content and logistics. Like I think the intersection of all three of those fascinates me. That's what I essentially got to do at Amazon, was be in retail, Amazon Studios, and logistics. And then TikTok was like emerging this new space, which is now launched, called TikTok Shop. And so I wanted to be at the intersection of that. So I was like, okay, I think I want to do this. Let's try something new and let's see how it goes.
That is such a powerful story, and I don't want to just gloss over it because there's so many things that happen. First of all, just taking a break. It's been a rough past 3 years for everyone coming out from the pandemic, trying to figure out life,
Yeah.
trying to figure out all that stuff, and then career wise, it is hard to your point because the longer you work in tech, I feel like, and the higher you go, it becomes part of your identity and sometimes
Yes.
personality. There's a reason why tech executives act the same way, talk the same
Yes.
way. It's like part of your brand or your soul, low key, it's now adjacent with that company. And so that's something I tell people to consider. It's like, yeah, you have to really think about what you want in life. And if it's like, okay, this is aligns with your life goals, not just your career goals, then keep aiming for those
Yeah.
things. But after a while, I love that you're like, you know what? Let me just take a break, and then clarity comes through that.
Absolutely.
And then second thing that you mentioned that's really powerful is like the relationship you've built and your reputation and credibility you've built in Amazon was amazing. And I know you won an award in 2018, given by Jeff Bezos. For the work that you did, I know, it's called the Just Do It Award, right? Which is a big deal, and I want you to talk about that because saying, okay, I'm just going to switch companies and, jump ship with no plan is not great, So for you, I feel like you definitely took the time to say, okay, I've done my work. Like I did what I was supposed to do. I've got the recognition. I've built solid relationships. And now it's time to put myself first to kind of go after what I feel like aligns with my curiosity
Yeah.
and things that I want to learn. But first, tell us about what it felt like to get the Just Do It award at Amazon from Jeff Bezos and your leadership team. How was that experience for you?
Yeah. It was very surreal. I remember walking across the stage to receive the award from Jeff Bezos, and the only thing I heard him say was like, "Great job and congratulations." And I don't remember anything else. Like I blacked out. I'm like, "Okay, I'm here. Hi, thank you." But I will say that moment probably played out multiple times in my head prior, before I even knew that could even get nominated for that role. Um, the
Mm.
and I want to take a step back even further, because when I first joined Amazon, I remember writing in one of my journals that um, I had joined the Black Employee Network, and I wrote out that I wanted to have an impact at the company that significantly improved the lives of Black employees and our Black customers. And to see that come true 3, 4 years later was honestly just phenomenal. So I think that like that Just Do It award moment happened earlier in my life when I wrote that in my journal. But
Wow.
Textures and Hues is very near and dear to my heart, and it was a storefront that myself and Rovina, the co-founder of it, and I created together, really emphasizing on Black hair care and all of the products that are needed, all of the tutorials and videos that are needed, the experience that goes into our hair, we wanted to bring live on Amazon. So back when I was an account manager, I was managing all these different brands and helping them grow their business. Most of them, frankly, none of them looked like us. like, not at all. It was very much white men. And I'm like, there's articles that are coming out saying Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, which I believe is still true to this day. And
Yes.
okay, perfect. Yes, because we get it. I love us. And there was not any, like, my clientele did not reflect that. And it did not make sense to me that we could be like a very, the Earth's most customer centric company and not meeting that need. So,
Mm.
from working with those different brands, I really sat down with my manager at the time, who was astronomically, like, I don't know if that's the right word, who was very impactful in my career. And I'm like, I have this idea. I want to have more Black owner, more diversity and representation in the entrepreneurs that we support. So I thought about the different categories where we fall, and beauty and hair care is like one of the top, if not the top, categories for entrepreneurs and for customers. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, Amazon, when I type in natural hair care, you are bringing me results that have nothing to do with hair, right? Like, you are not giving me
Wow.
brands, you are not giving me products. This is like in 2015, 2016, or 2016, I believe. Like, it was like, I'm typing in natural hair care stuff and it's bringing me the most random of soap that has nothing to do with hair. It was rude. I'm like, this is rude.
Mm.
So
Mm.
from there, I had the idea, like, let's create a place where we can educate entrepreneurs on the Amazon platform. Let's create a place where we can get them launched. Let's do marketing initiatives to bring, customers in to know how to shop for their hair products. Let's help people, give them tutorials so that you don't necessarily have to go to like YouTube plus Amazon plus the hair supply store plus Instagram, all these places. Anywho, all of that led to Ravina and I partnering together to create a storefront focused on textured hair care. And we pitched the idea to, at the time, his name was Jeff Wilkie, the head of CEO of retail. He greenlit it on the spot. So we created a document that listed out the business case, the need for it. He said yes. I was shaking at that in that meeting, like sweating inside, like everything. Something I will say super important though, at the table it was Jeff Wilkie, myself, Rovina, but we also had advocates and we had people who really believed in us, who were in leadership roles at the table as well. And they
Mm.
significantly impacted, the need for this. They were like our backup. Like, we weren't coming just us two. It's like, no, this is a business need and we have leaders who also agree. So I think that goes to like the tip on relationships. It really matters about developing genuine relationships, like not fake ones, genuine ones. But Jeff Wilkie greenlit it, gave us the headcount to build out a team. So we brought in some marketers. I transitioned into a marketing manager role from account management. We brought in some engineers help, some design help. One of the best things, one of the things that I love the most about launching Textures and Hues is the opportunities that we created for other people. The photographers we work with, the
Mm.
designers, the models, the um, engineers, like everybody to me, I remember them saying to me, Kim, I am so thankful to get an opportunity to work on a project that matters to my community. And like, that's what people want at the end of the
Wow.
day. You want something that where you feel like you contributed to a bigger thing that positively impacts people's lives. So Textures and Hues was born in like February of 2017, I believe. Um, at Amazon, they give awards to employees who find the gap, who find a customer need, and then just do something about it. And so, all the way from like me searching online, not finding anything, to pitching it to Ravina and us building it together, um, to then saying, like, this is a gap that we needed that was not filled, and here's a solution for it. Jeff Bezos and his leadership team voted, and, we won an award for that. So it was a very surreal moment to
Oh
get
my
there.
gosh. I love everything about a story, and it's just goes to show that representation matters,
Absolutely.
like in the workplace in tech. And I know people say it all the time, and now with the tech climate and people giving up on DEI, diversity, equity,
Yeah.
inclusion, like. But I'm just kind of think if you weren't at Amazon and you didn't have the passion that you did for helping other people, this, program, initiative would never have been born, and people wouldn't have the opportunity to have impact the way they
Yeah,
did because of your initiative of following curiosity. And something that you said is like, find the gap and do something about it. If you heard nothing from this podcast episode, leave with that. Find the gap in your work, in your life, whatever, and do something about it.
absolutely.
And that's where the real change and impact comes, because I do feel like a lot of people are not happy, and it's fine not to be happy with your job. I think that's totally acceptable. But taking time to evaluate and say, okay, is it just because it's a toxic work environment? If it's toxic, well,
I'm
get out.
out.
Find a way to, because there's some things that you can't change. But if it's more about, you know being dissatisfied about maybe the things that you're working on, and it's interesting because this wasn't directly something that you worked on a day-to-day basis. You
Correct.
just found a gap within the company at large. I'm like, I think there's a business opportunity here. And that's the second part. Like, okay, you can find many gaps, and if it doesn't have a business case, no one's going to back it up. Sorry, this
Yeah,
is capitalism. People want to make money and make sure that it's benefiting, the company at
yeah,
large. Just saying.
that's true.
And then the last part, I'm bringing on supporters, advocates, right, from a leadership perspective that can back your idea and like say, no, this is credible. This is something worth investing into. So I love that story. So much to learn from. So like I said, if you get nothing else, find the gap and do something about
Yes.
it. Take action. Take action. Take action. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. So fast forward, now you're at TikTok, which is a different game altogether. I'm sure everyone listening, if you haven't heard about TikTok, I don't know where you live, but it's a company that everyone is familiar, because I think, to something you've said, it gives people access to create, but also to monetize from their creativity, which is so interesting. But talk to me briefly, just kind of about like the culture difference, right? In terms of like, okay, going from Amazon, which is like a huge tech giant, to TikTok, which is kind of like also big tech company, but more of like, how do I put it? Like, a lot of people can like relate
Yeah,
to the company because it's kind of like person based,
yeah,
right? Like creator based. It's like, the platform is really nothing without the creators. While Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, it's like, oh, they can, it's software, so they can do without certain groups of people. I'm just being honest, but it's like the whole platform for TikTok is basically people being on
yeah.
there, creating their lives, sharing. So what has that been for you in terms of that transition into being, at the company where it's like, oh wow, it's very consumer focused, very, very consumer
Yeah,
focused.
I love it. I love it. It is. You're at a place that appreciates like the individual and how they can drive and make something viral. They. It's not a. How's the best way to say this? At TikTok, I feel like the consumer is always first, and the experience is always built around them. I did feel that same way at Amazon too. Amazon's very customer centric, so that's a transferable skill or leadership principle, I guess
Mm,
that could go. But being in a place that is creative and driven by creatives, I feel so free in a way that I haven't felt ever before at a company. It's like they want you
mm,
to test the product. They want you to think about the filters that they are creating. Like they want you to think about, how do our creators really support this? It's all driven by content. So I think in this next phase of my life, I'm also super interested in from a content perspective of what draws people in, what doesn't, how to create content, how to edit it. But being at a consumer driven, like facing company that also really values the creatives in the space, it feels very freeing. It feels very like you can still find the gaps because there's a lot of areas where representation is still needed or needs to be taken care of in a different way on the platform. If you want to be in a space that's creative, that's a more freeing and open and appreciates like the individual, I do think TikTok is a great place to be for that. More specifically, they want to test and learn quickly. So being at this company
mm.
where it is more driven, focus is more driven by content, it's more around what works, what resonates with people, and what can they do to amplify it. The other element I'd say, sorry, this is a long answer. Um,
Go ahead.
The other side I'd say is it's a very much storytelling driven. So, compared to some of the other tech companies that have been around for a while, um, more content, more storytelling. Like, what's the story behind this person's life? What's the story behind this brand? And how do we bring them together? Is really encouraged in a way that I just haven't felt before. So I hope I'm answering your question, but yeah,
Yeah, I love that like contrast, like name some similarities because I do feel like a lot of tech companies started the same way where it's like, oh, like we want to be customer focused, and then obviously the more you grow, scalability, a lot of things are lost within
mm-hmm.
that. But storytelling, is at the heart of TikTok, and a lot of people's life have been changed from just posting their stories, posting their journeys, and you just see that like their whole life has
Yeah,
changed literally from like one post or two posts. So I love that tangible impact. I mean, like I said, not, tech companies are not perfect. We know the drawbacks of TikTok and all that stuff, but it's great to see that there are people like us working in these companies to bring about change that we want to see. Lastly, I'm curious, we've talked about your career journey. What, are there some resources, books, podcast that has helped you? Because I know a lot of us, we want to learn, we want to grow, and that's why I also created this podcast. But throughout your journey, what are some resources that helped you with just kind of like making the career moves that you've done so far?
yeah. I shout out to Tech Unlocked. This is a great podcast to learn and get exposed.
Yes, thanks for listening. Yes.
What's helped me with transitioning into a new role is a book called The First 90 Days. Actually, I should say I love to
Mm,
read. So if it's audio or
okay.
visual, like I'm gonna read it. But what's helped me with
Okay.
my career is a book called The First 90 Days, and that is about how to make yourself successful, how to be successful in the first 90 days on a job, whether it's same industry, new manager, new company, whatever, it applies. There's also a book called The Defining Decade. It is about being in your 20s. Okay, yes, you read it.
I love. I've given those that book out to like my
Yes,
cousins, a lot of people. Like I found out later, but whatever decade you're in, I think that book is still worth reading.
agreed. Yeah, it is. It is relevant to any decade, and it's all about taking like action now. So yeah, the defining decade is great. I also, this is probably a little different. I subscribe to the Masterclass app. There's a lot of great content on there just around like what we would call soft skills, which are really hard skills, but developing yourself. So that's one resource. I love going to Afrotech as well. I've met many connections there who have later become my mentors that way. Um, and then there's a book I'm reading now called The Power of Now that is phenomenal and it's about taking action and moving, transitioning into that. So outside of that, I think there's one more there's a newsletter that I love to subscribe to called The Mogul Millennial. And they have a lot of resources in there for entrepreneurs, but also like for people and professionals in tech. It's a great place just to go find a bunch of resources and grow that way. So those are some books I recommend.
Thanks for sharing. And I know, like, obviously we all have lives outside of technology. It's just our day job. What have you been up to creatively wise? Because I know you're a creative person, and I know you have some stuff in the works. If you'd like to share with us, what have you been up to outside of just like your day job?
So this year I tapped back into photography, which I love, and specifically film photography. I don't know how it connects to tech. It may not in any way, but I love doing things with my hands, and photography gives me a way to do that. I developed the film in a dark room. Like, that's my jam. I just feel like I go there and I can just zone out. Also, this year, my sister and I are launching a candle brand called Tone Candles. Yay!
That's
So for all the
awesome.
candle lovers out there, thank you. Our candle fragrances are influenced by books and book genres. So if you think about a romance novel, like what does that give you? Like it gives you sensual. It gives you like
Okay.
warmth, right? Yeah. So we have that launching in early December. Tone Candles. So yeah, for the candles and book lovers out there in
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely a candy girly. So I will be purchasing
the world.
and
Okay.
we'll have the link. Is there a website that people should know about or an Instagram page folks can um, kind of keep tabs on for when it launches?
Yes, you can join our newsletter at www.tonecandles.com, and that's TONE candles. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Tone Candles. And for those who are curious about what tone means a large book. So because our candles are influenced by books, we wanted to tie it in that way.
Okay,
But that's
marketing come through. Okay.
us.
I love to I love to see, I love to see. But Kimberly, thank you so much for being on the show. I've learned a lot from our conversation, and I love having conversations like this because I can't talk about what you just talked about. So it's great to have people come in and be their authentic self and share, the goals and the passions and their journey throughout tech, but also the life outside of tech. I feel like we all have personalities and things that we love, so you don't have to fit into a persona. Like, oh, I have to be this type of person to be in tech. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, and I know a lot of people learn from your career journey.
Absolutely. Grace, thank you so much for creating this platform, this space for us to come share our stories, but more importantly, for us to also learn from others. The work you're doing is needed and appreciated. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.